an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, Season 2, sort of, episodes 64 and 65. In these episodes, Luffy and company reach Whiskey Peak, and all of it is so weird. Their guests just jump overboard and leave, and I love that this is just an island full of bounty hunters. They're just sitting around waiting to show somebody a good time so that they can either murder them or turn them in for money. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Bernadette for commissioning this episode. Actual Bernadette. In the chat, somehow Florian has logged in with Bernadette's account, but Bernadette is also logged in with her account. So they're both talking, but they both look like they're Bernadette, and it's very confusing. Anyway, these episodes were super fun. Really weird, but not as weird as this show gets sometimes. So, to start things off, we are in the midst of a snowstorm, which is, I think, the first time that we've seen snow on this show, if I'm not mistaken. And the whole attitude on the ship is basically, we've got two people who are determined to enjoy themselves. One, of course, being Luffy. The other being Usopp, which I confess surprised me a little bit. I kind of expected Luffy to be the only one. And I'm interested to keep an eye on that in the future, because Usopp has the competitive streak with Luffy because he wants to be the captain himself. He would like to be considered the captain. Nobody sees him as the captain, and he has to know that, but he still, longs for it in his heart. But I didn't think that he had the same kind of, childlike streak that Luffy has. And I realized, looking back, in a lot of ways, the excitement about lying and inventing stories is a childlike quality. And the way that he falls for the sales pitch about all of the stuff back in Lugtown when he's being sold a bill of goods is also kind of like a combo childlike, in that he's very innocent and doesn't realize he's being conned, and also just the childlike quality of, I love toys. So I realized as I was watching, and I was surprised by this, that maybe it should not be that surprising. He actually has displayed this quality. I just haven't... I think, you know what it is? Luffy is so exaggerated with all of his personality that anybody who doesn't come as close to outright insanity doesn't really register. But it's not like it's not there. It's just muted in comparison. I think if it weren't for Luffy, I would definitely have considered Usopp to be sort of childish. But in comparison with Luffy, nobody really seems that childish. So the two of them are out on the deck and enjoying this weather, building, Luffy builds this very sort of crude snowman. And meanwhile, Usopp makes this beautiful Snow Queen sculpture. I love this so much. It's like this gorgeous work of art, a genuine wow, damn. And Luffy's just that's amazing. He gives him a full compliment of just oh, wow, yeah, excellent. And then just takes its head off. I adore this. It's just be yeah, wow, you are super talented. Fuck you. And thus begins a snowball fight of a type that I don't think any of us will ever get to see. This is one of those things that everybody talks about, how when you hear about sort of nostalgic throwback situations around the holidays, people talk about snowball fights. And I gotta be honest, I don't think I've ever participated in a snowball fight that I have enjoyed. It's always either been, we're gonna like joke around, but it's gonna get a little bit too real very quickly. Everybody's gonna be a little bit pissed, and we're gonna act like this is all in good fun, but you're going for blood. You're not playing. Not really. It's either that, or I do genuinely just want to play around, but the snow is full of ice, and it hurts. So I was intending for this to just be a playful thing, and now somebody's actually injured. It's one of those two. And I don't know if that's just growing up in the Northeast and the type of snow we had, or if it's just the type of people that I hung out with. But overall, it wasn't great. So whenever people are like, oh, I want to have a snowball fight, I'm like, I guess. Go knock yourself out. I'll be inside having cocoa with my fuzzy socks on. Thank you. And that's pretty much the attitude that Nami has here. She is watching the two of them playing around. She's got like a big coat on and earmuffs and everything. And she's a little bit mystified by the weather. Can't figure out exactly how this is happening. And as we find out later, navigating on the Grand Line is just a completely different animal. She isn't ready for how this works. She thinks that because of the instructions she was given, that it's going to be fairly simple and straightforward. It's just a new set of rules. But once we get into it, it sort of seems like it's not just a new set of rules. It's like a new set of rules that are really just sort of a general guideline. And in the midst of that, you have to fucking like improv your way through shit, because who knows what's going to happen and how things are going to end up and how the weather's going to behave and all of this. So she is suffering a little bit of like a crisis of confidence this episode. It's like this is one of those things, man. And I do like, it's a bit of a rite of passage getting older, becoming an adult and realizing. But when you're younger and you're good at something, you get sort of complacent, especially if you're good enough that other adults tend to be impressed, and you really begin to feel yourself and think, okay, I can handle this. Great. And then you get put out into a bigger pond, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, I really thought I had a handle on this. And it turns out I only had a handle on it because I was operating sometimes in a studio where I knew all of the tools. I knew how the computer worked. I knew how all of the, everything was set up. And I knew what my particular teachers were always looking for. And then you get put somewhere new where you don't know where stuff is. You don't know how to use these programs. The teachers are looking for distinctly different shit than your old teachers were. And there's a whole new way of doing things. And it turns out the way that you were taught is actually 10 years old. And you need to learn the modern way of doing it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I really thought I had this on lock. And, let's see, Bernadette says it's not a new set of rules, it's no rules. Where there are rules, though. The whole thing with the islands and going from one to the other, I don't really get it. I'll be honest, guys. I don't really understand how this goes. Alex says, two rules. Go where the log pose points and don't go insane. I don't understand the log pose. You go to an island, and then you have to wait a certain amount of time for... It's the way they talk about it, it sort of sounds like to download the coordinates for the next place. But that's not it. It's like a magnetism. So it takes a certain amount of time, I guess, for that tool to, lock on to the location of the next nearest island. Is that right? Let's see. Alex says, so the log pose tunes into the magnetism of the next two islands. Bernadette says the magnetic field of the island will set the log pose. Okay. And the different magnetism between the islands creates wild weather patterns. Interesting. Okay. So basically, it sort of sounds like a naturally occurring kind of scavenger hunt. Because you know how in a scavenger hunt, you can't find the next thing until you get the instructions from finding the one that on the step you're on. So that's basically it. You have to go to each and every island because it's a requirement for the way that the travel is set up here, which is actually a really clever device for requiring our people to stop everywhere. I wouldn't, it's not totally necessary. You could just make it that they need food. You could just make it that they need to restock shit, they need to repair the ship, whatever. But it is kind of a nice, built-in technique that makes everything very sort of, I don't want to say predictable because I feel like that has a negative connotation, but it makes it so that you're sitting back prepared to go through every single island and see what's about to happen. And I like that. It feels like the Odyssey at this point where every place is going to have its own very unique kind of threat. And it's probably going to be fantastical because we're out of reality at this point. Being in the Grand Line, it feels like, okay, now we've moved on to Weirdville and anything can happen here. Let's see. Alex says, yeah, otherwise you could go backward from Reverse Mountain and just go to Raftel, I guess. Okay. I believe you. That just didn't really compute because I can't see what you mean in my head, but I believe you. So, okay. We have everybody doing their individual things. These two guys are snow fighting. Sanji is shoveling snow and delighted to be doing it because it's what Nami told him to do. We have the two guests, unquote. They are sitting wrapped in blankets, whining about how cold it is. And I gotta say, Nami fucking coming in with just that energy that I need. She basically screams at them to go fucking participate because we're doing you a favor. We're not hosting you. Get up off your asses and go fucking do something. And I was like, oh, amen, girl. Yes, exactly. And then all of a sudden, there's this crack of thunder. And I don't know about how statistically likely this is, but thunder can happen in a snowstorm. It's just rare. I've seen it twice in my life, I think. And Nami is just looking around what in the fuck is going on? And their two guests are you don't really seem to know what you're doing. This is this is how the Grand Line works. You haven't been steering. Are you sure we're going the right way, actually? And when she goes and checks, evidently she just checked it. But somehow they are now going in the wrong direction. I'm not entirely sure what was supposed to have happened here. If it's the current grabbed them and put them somewhere else. But yeah, it's another moment where their quote guests, one of them says, "Are you really a navigator?" And Nami is so angry. She's so mad about it. There is nothing like feeling shitty because you fucked up something you think you're good at, but then somebody that you don't even like criticizing you over it, I will murder them. And Nami indeed literally kicks their asses. She kicks them out of the room. And begins to shout all of these instructions. And I don't know what it was, because we've been in some serious situations on this ship before where I haven't felt the kind of tension that I felt here. I don't know if it's because of the variety of changes in weather that we go through that makes it all feel so sort of there makes it feel just really unstable in a general way. But overall, this scene and all of them struggling as the ship heads straight for a rock wall, it was genuinely putting me on edge. Everybody is yelling at one another about what do we do? There's fog rolling in. We can't seem to turn the rudder. Nami goes to the tiller with Sanji and is trying to help him. And throughout all of this, Zorro is literally sleeping covered in snow. And everybody has tried to wake him up at various times. And they are unsuccessful. He just keeps sleeping. So the bottom of the ship winds up scraping against the edge of this island and damages the ship. As this is happening, clouds are rolling in, like black clouds. Wind starts to pick up. Even Luffy is looking nervous at this point, like, what the fuck is happening? Nami is telling everybody where to go, what to repair. And I gotta say, guys, let's be honest, at this point, Nami is the captain. Right? Like, can we all just say that? She's the one who is actually keeping track of everything. What each person needs to be doing, where they are heading, how the ship needs to be run. Like, Luffy isn't actually contributing in any way at all. So look, I get it that he's the guy whose idea it was for them to start this journey, and if they want to give him the sort of vanity title of captain, that's fine. He is their top fighter for sure, but, like, Nami is the one that knows what's actually going on. And as a lady who finds herself reading about the situation regarding women's positions in their jobs in a lot of places, namely actually being the one who does everything but not getting the title or respect accorded to the person who gets credit for doing those things, I would just like to say I'm going to be starting a grassroots effort to get Nami recognized as the actual captain of the ship, and I hope that you guys will all back me on that, because it's going to be a serious push that I am going to be putting a lot of time and effort into, making banners, signs, etc. So get ready for that. And I will definitely be hosting some of the the rallies at the One Piece theme park that I will be opening. There's going to be a little area where you can go and sign up for this. Team Nami. So anyway, at this point, everybody is doing their various things that are helpful to the team. We have Sanji making food, telling everybody to keep up their strength. Of course, Luffy overindulging. Usopp is going around checking on things and trying to help repair stuff. And overall, it's just really starting to look dire. They finally make it to the other side of this. The camera, like, basically it goes dark and then comes back up and we're in calm blue skies, calm sea again. And everybody is exhausted and asleep on deck. And this is when Zorro wakes up. And he makes the mistake of, first of all, calling everybody lazy, which just don't call people lazy. Unless you see everything somebody has done all day for 6 months to a year, don't call them lazy. And even then, probably just don't call them lazy. But he does that. And he says something about how we'd better be on the right track. Like, he's contributing something significant by mentioning they should stay on course. Very helpful. And everybody begins to get quite irritated. And he didn't even notice that the two guests they have are there. When Luffy is like, oh yeah, we're showing them where, we're bringing them home. Zorro says, well, we don't owe them anything. And Luffy's like, no, we don't. And Zorro just seems genuinely confused. Like, why are we doing something nice for people that we don't know, that are definitely not nice people themselves? And honestly, I am not mad at him for that. That tends to be a lot of the time the attitude I take in personal matters. In greater scope, I am for doing nice things for people that I don't know or care about in a larger sense. But I have limited energy and interest. And I'm going to reserve that for people that I actually give a shit about. I'm not mad. Anyway, he's in the midst of kneeling down in front of these two and questioning them. And he says something about, like, what were your names again? And they both tell him, Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday. But they're reacting in a way, like they're sweating as he peers into their faces. And I was sort of like, okay, 2 reasons they could be sweating. One, because they didn't expect to be questioned closely, and their story isn't going to hold water. Maybe these aren't their real names. I don't know. Or they recognize Zorro, and they are intimidated by him. And as it turns out, it's sort of both. I think that they recognize Zorro. They don't seem to consider him as much of a threat once it comes down to actually fighting him. But I think that they just thought he was going to begin to like put two and two together about where they were heading, which is so funny because like even if they were bounty hunters and you figured that out, there's no reason to think that you're like being led into a trap that's an island full of bounty hunters. Like, I don't think anybody would assume that. So he's in the middle of talking to them, and here comes Nami. She's standing behind him and she smacks him in the head. She's wearing a shirt that says mode on it, and she's wearing that for most of these 2 episodes. I'm a little bit interested in why. I guess it's just because she's the girl, and also because she's like, it's been mentioned that she has shopped for clothes and stuff, but Nami's the only one who gets a costume change. Her clothes are different fairly frequently. Everybody else, they're wearing the exact same shit every goddamn day. But she is the one who gets the different weird outfits. And most of the time, I actually kind of like them. But this shirt, like, it's got one of those sort of fishnet necklines, and then it goes into a bustier sort of look underneath. She's got, that's enough of a look, and it's saying mode on it in addition is a weird choice that doesn't really work for me, but it doesn't matter, but I just wanted to mention it. Also, she has the Arlong tattoo in this moment fairly visible on one arm, and I thought that she had that removed, or is this meant to be a different... I'm trying to remember. Did she get a replacement tattoo, guys? Did I forget something? Because, it's the same sort of color, I think, the blue. But I am vaguely remembering that she did something else. She changed it to the pinwheel and the tangerines. Oh, right. I forgot. Okay, cool. Thank you, guys. Because, I just didn't really, remember even that she had the tattoo at all. But in this scene, it's pretty noticeable. And she is standing over Zorro in this scene. And they're depicting her as angry in a different way than they have done in the past. Where she's literally on fire. Like, there is red and orange mist pouring off her body. Because she is so angry that she's practically glowing. And I really like this depiction of rage. It works very well. And she is just railing on him for sleeping through the entire storm. We tried to wake you up so many times and you didn't do shit. He turns around and says, "What?" And then we zoom out. And when we come back, he has a bunch of lumps on his head because she just beat the hell out of him. And at this point, she says, "Don't let your guard down, everyone. Who knows what's going to happen? I finally understand what the grand line is. And that is, there is no predicting what the fuck's going on. And you have to constantly be ready for anything." And as it turns out, she takes that shit to heart. She is dead serious about it because she's one of the only people later on who manages to fucking stay awake and on their toes and be conscious of what's happening. So they finally look up and they see Whiskey Peak, an island covered in giant cacti, which is kind of, I expected that to be more of a thing. And we haven't really gotten that far into this arc yet, so I'm wondering if it still will be. At this point, our 2 guests jump on the railing in the most dramatic pose It's practically like the superhero landing, like that generic standard superhero landing. They smile and say, "Thanks for taking us home, honeys. If we're linked by fate, we'll meet again. Bye-bye, baby." And then backflip off the ship and swim to shore. I love everybody staring after them like, what in the fuck? What was that? You know what, guys? It was drama. That's what it was. It was straight drama. You don't need it. You guys have your own drama. You don't need these two. They're just going to be... They're toxic. They are. Just look at them. 100%. So, they take off, and everybody is looking at this island and beginning to wonder what the hell is up with it. Are there monsters here? At least we can just get on the ship and bail. And this is when Nami has to be like, no, we can't. We have to stay for a certain period of time. And when she says it, it's apparent nobody remembers this. Unless we store the magnetism of this island, we can't go to the next island. Since each one requires a different amount of time, some islands require only several hours, while others require days. So, I like this too. Depending on where they go, they're going to be required to stick it out in order to leave and have any hope of reaching the next place they need to go. So at that point, Luffy's just like, cause I think it's Usopp who says, well, what if we have to leave because there's monsters? And Luffy says, we'll worry about that if it happens. And Zorro chimes in with, you're right. Luffy's right. There's no point in thinking about that now. We just have to take our next step. Can I tell you guys something? I remember being like that. I remember being able to just do things. What happened to that? I'd like to know. Because as much as being prepared and thinking things through and planning ahead have their place, I really do feel I have taken it to an unhealthy place, and I need to get back to this, where I am going to be able to like actually take a step forward without sincerely overthinking everything. Into like, when you overthink like that, you just wind up stymied and not moving in any direction at all. And I can be a pretty decisive person still, which helps. Like, once I have decided something, then I am like, all right, well, here we go. However, I can use planning to sort of feed into an overthinking thing and pretend that I'm taking action, and even do it so convincingly that I think that I've fooled everybody else as well as myself, when in fact I am just procrastinating. I'm using planning to procrastinate. And I just really, this moment where Luffy just says, well, we'll worry about that when, like, if it happens. And Zorro chimes in with, yeah, there's no point thinking about it now. I'm like, my instinct is to argue with that and be like, yeah, there is a point in thinking about it. And then I was like, is there? I really had to stop and ask myself, like, what point is there? Like, you can, there's just one thing to be done. You stay long enough to get what you need to leave safely. So really, no, you know what you have to do. And thinking about worst case scenarios isn't going to change the facts of what need to happen. And I kind of hate that. It's weird little moments like this in the job that I have covering things that I just feel so called out by the material. And I know that they don't mean it like that, but it just genuinely... I just covered chapters of Dresden Files with Rashawn, in which Dresden has like a conversation with Michael where he confesses to all of these fuck-ups and feels really guilty about it. And Michael basically tells him, you give so much grace to other people's fuck-ups, but not your own, because you think you're better than everybody, because you're super arrogant. And so you hold yourself to a way higher standard than everyone else because you feel superior, which is kind of fucked up, dude. And I was like, oh my God, how can you just say that to me? Like, in my face. So anyway, I really want to be a little bit more like Zorro and Luffy. I do. I need to find that energy in life. That's all I'm saying. So, we approach this island as everybody theorizes about the variety of things that could be wrong. They can see figures in the mist as they approach, and they're not sure what to think. They're almost wondering if those are like the outlines of monsters. And as they get closer, all of a sudden they see all these people cheering. The whole place is welcoming them and excited to see them in a way that feels wildly out of proportion to what these guys have done. Why would they be important enough for this to happen? Who knows? So, and it feels so sincere for so much of it that I genuinely was kind of like, is this just going to wind up being a cool paradise? Like, because this is a thing, I can't remember which island it is, but in the Odyssey, there is a place that he almost doesn't want to leave. And I was like, maybe that's going to be the thing that everybody's going to be so happy here initially, you know? But no. Alex says the Lotus Eaters. Is that it? Because I thought the Lotus Eaters were just basically stoned as fuck. I didn't think that it was so nice there so much as you got accidentally drugged and just lost the motivation to move on. But I thought that there was a place that was genuine paradise, and it was just so great that nobody actually wanted to move on. But maybe I'm conflating them. Florian says, what's the difference? Touche. So, as they park, so to speak, they are greeted by a man whom I shall refer to from henceforth as Cogsworth, because that is who he is. He looks exactly like Cogsworth if Cogsworth had been animated to look like a person rather than a giant clock. This dude is opera-themed, musician-themed, could kind of go in any direction, but it's really... He keeps interrupting himself because he gets a frog in his throat and has to and then continues talking, which I expected that tick to get annoying, but I just actually kept finding it pretty funny. And his whole outfit here, guys, is... All right, here we go. We're going into it. We're going into detailed descriptions of this guy's costume. Cogsworth, I feel, is enough to really sum it up in general, but just to give you, the idea. But I love the way the camera slowly pans up to on these new guys, because they always know that we're going to really want to pay attention. So he's got brass buckled shoes, sort of, what's the word I want? I want to say capri pants. They're more like, I don't want to say pantaloons. That's not the one I want. Oh, Alex says, I've heard him called George Washington too. I guess I sort of see that. I guess that's sort of in the same period as what I'm imagining, which is sort of a Mozart era due to his wig, and I'm calling it a wig. I think that's his actual hair, but he has a breeches. That's the kind of pants he's got on. Breeches and socks under it, like hose. He's got a braid edged blue jacket and a vest with what looks almost like a bolo tie at the neck. And all of this, it's a very wide body type, but then it goes up into a tiny head. And then it really becomes apparent quickly why his head is so tiny, because you can't get his hair on a person with a normal sized head and still have this whole thing like work out proportionally. His hair lays in a series of 3 tiers, cinnamon roll style, on his shoulders. And as we see later, inside those rolls are hidden gun barrels. Which I gotta say, that's one of my favorite things about this show, is how they just figure out where they're gonna hide gun barrels on any given person. They always have them. You know, there's always, like, if not gun barrels, some other, like, weird secret weapon that is tied in with their costume somehow, in always an unexpected, like, you know, just something that will be kind of, you'll notice that the design is really weird in a particular way, but you'll just sort of put that down as like, well, it show's weird, whatever, yeah. And then eventually something very specific will happen regarding that detail, and you're like, oh, okay, I wonder what came first, like the weapon choice or the design detail. I would like to ask Oda that, like, does he decide, okay, I want this guy to have machine guns all over his head, so I'm going to do these, like, hair rolls? Or does he do the hair rolls first and then be like, what goes with this? What could I fit? I have to think it's the second one, because he doesn't strike me as a person who would want to go with weapons first. I feel like he is, from the energy that you get on how nutty all of his character designs are, this is a guy who straight up attempts to make the weirdest looking person first, right? And then fits in everything around that. That just feels like how he rolls. I would love to know what drugs he's on, because this is definitely a man who partakes, right? Like, there is an Alice in Wonderland energy to a lot of this that is... Alice in Wonderland, for the record, I hate. So it's very surprising how much I love this show, considering how close to Alice in Wonderland it feels a lot of the time. Because Alice in Wonderland, it's a similar, like, there's no real rhyme or reason to certain things happening beyond the fact that it would be cool or weird. People show up with weird thematic shit that you're just kind of like, what? But I've always found it really dark. And even as a child, I think that it might be partially like my background. I grew up in a home with people who struggled with addiction. And my father didn't get clean until I was probably like 9. So I saw him high numerous times. And I remember being really freaked out by it. And eventually there was like a back to school, or what do they call it? After school special that was like like saying no to drugs, but it was with the Muppets. And there's a kid who gets stoned, and I can't remember like what drug it's meant that he's taken, but he's riding this really weird, creepy roller coaster with the Muppets, and it's all animated. It's not like the puppet Muppets. It's an animated kind of thing. And as a kid, it scared me, because it was just a combination of something that was supposed to be real childlike and innocent, the Muppets, who I loved, mixed in with this drug message that was really upsetting and a little bit too close to home. And ever since seeing that, things that tend to be surrealist that I saw as a kid got weirdly tied in with that, like, after school special in my mind. So I could tell as a kid somehow that Alice in Wonderland was all due to somebody being fucked up. Like, I just zeroed in on that very quickly as a kid. And I didn't find out that that was actually true until years later. And it was no surprise at all. I was like, well, obviously. It was, like, horrifying. He had to have been stoned for all of that. Like, are you kidding me? Like, more than stoned. Just absolutely flying. And thus, I find Alice in Wonderland deeply off-putting. I think it's a combo of knowing that this, like, was the influence behind it, and the surface level innocence to a lot of it, it just feels really, really sinister to me. So anyway, this show, it feels like he probably had to be on drugs creating a lot of this, but it doesn't have that same vibe where it feels like, oh, it's trying to pretend to be something innocent and cute when really it's like got an underbelly of something horrifying. It feels like, oh no, this is a guy that, like, he was just, like, stoned outside in his yard having a glass of lemonade. This isn't a guy that was, like, stoned and peeling the walls down trying to escape from his own home because he was having an acid trip that he was being chased by zombies, which is always how I sort of pictured, you know, like, just that it was a bad time for him and he made the best of it with writing Alice in Wonderland. Oh no, he seems like he's got a good time. Like, he's just, this feels fun. Here goes something weird. It's almost like if you talk to a little kid and they just, like, come up with, off the top of their head, something wild that you're like, oh, all right, yeah, you know what? Let's do that. That's a really, like, original idea, because why would you ever put those two things together? Kind of like Axe Cop. I don't know if you guys have ever read Axe Cop, but if not, check into that. Alex says it also doesn't feel like a dream. It's grounded and ridiculous at the same time. That's also true, Alex. Alice in Wonderland has that sort of anything goes at any time, because everything is up in the air, and I don't enjoy that particularly. Sometimes a little bit of that to be contrasted against a story that's otherwise really structured can be good, but I like that there are enough rules, and it is straightforward enough in this universe that we don't have to do that. Anyway, all this to say, this guy looks wild. Igaropoi? Cogsworth. He greets them, and he says, how about we throw you guys a party tonight? This is accepted with huge appreciation and enthusiasm by everybody except Zorro and Nami, who are, this feels shady to me. So then we go into the party itself. And again, everybody but Zorro and Nami are having the best time. And it's I love this because they each basically get something specifically catering to their vice. So Usopp gets all these people gathered around, completely believing his stories, calling him amazing and heroic and Captain Usopp and whatever. Sanji is surrounded by pretty girls who are falling all over themselves to be near him and compliment him and whatever. Luffy just has as much food as he can eat, like literally as much as he can eat, to the point where it winds up incapacitating him for a great deal of the next episode. And meanwhile, Nami, they're trying to ply her with drinks, and she's just like, I don't really want any, but thank you. And this guy's really pushy about it, and I was like, He says something about how, like, oh, it's not alcoholic, and I was like, up your butt, it's not alcoholic. Like, of course, you're such a liar, and you're not even, like, good at it. And she winds up going for it. And I was like, she has to know. And indeed, she does know. For a while there, it looks like she just sort of falls for his line. But I should have had more faith in her than I did. And she winds up getting Zorro involved in the whole thing as well, trying to get him to get involved in the drinking competition. And eventually, everybody is passed out on the floor. And Cogsworth is like, ha ha ha, I've got you now. So, outside, he is talking with his Confederates about how, and it turns out he is Mr. 8, they're all given numbers according to like their abilities, and the lower the number, the higher power level you are. But yeah, they have the wanted poster for Luffy, and he is fully aware of how much Luffy is worth. So they wind up deciding that they're going to capture him, but all of them are sort of bemused at the fact that Luffy could possibly be worth that much money. And later on, when Zorro steps forward, they're all like, oh, they just got it wrong when they made the poster. Clearly it's this guy who's worth all that money. And I was like, you know what? I understand that. Makes sense to me. I might think that also. Oh, and there is this nun that comes out. What is her name? She is like a bodybuilding, like, badass with a couple of pink pigtails. And I love this because she is huge and really muscular, but she has this like really feathery sort of girlish voice. And I really appreciated that they didn't just give her a dudeish voice, because that feels like something that would happen in a lot of stuff. And I'm sure that part of it was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if a woman looked like this but still sounded really girlish, which like, But honestly, I do kind of appreciate it, because the masculinization of women who are super muscular, it's just like, it doesn't need to be. You can be jacked as fuck and still want to wear a cute dress and put your hair in pigtails. That's fine, you know? So I do kind of enjoy her, and I was worried at first that this was going to go in like a slightly transphobic direction, and they don't do that. So far, I should asterisk that. So that's cool. Thanks. Low bar, but there it is. Mrs. Monday. Thank you, Alex. Oh, Bernadette says, that it's non-alcoholic is censoring again, I think, because the German version had them drinking for sure. I feel like he was just saying that to try and convince her. I don't feel like it was like them trying to convince them all that it was non-alcoholic. I feel like it was, and I could be misreading this, but I felt like it was implied that everyone else was just drinking booze, and he had to lie to her specifically that it was non-alcoholic to get her to drink some. But I may have just misunderstood that. But anyway, so everybody is talking about what they're going to do because the town is short of food. And Monday says something about how, like, we weren't really expecting the whale meat anyway, which Team Rocket gets very indignant over the fact that they tried their best and it just didn't work out. Can you just not criticize us, please? Thanks. So, at this point, they are in the midst of talking about how they're going to capture Luffy and everybody else. And all of a sudden they get interrupted by Zorro, who says, sorry, but do you mind letting them sleep? They're all exhausted from the journey this afternoon. And they turn around and he's just fucking chilling on the roof watching them with his sword ready and has overheard everything they said. And then one of their people runs out and says something about how the guy with the belly band disappeared, which I don't know why, but that being the descriptor that you just decide to focus on when you're talking about Zorro is wild to me. How about the guy with 3 swords? How about the guy with green hair? How about the hot guy? How about the jacked guy? But no, it's the guy with the belly band. What? Get your priorities straight, sir. Insulting. I'm disgusted. Anyway, so everybody is like, we thought you were asleep. What the hell? And this is when he figures out that all of these people are part of Baroque works. I don't know exactly, like, the only thing that I sort of have made sense of this with is the use of the word Baroque to mean, like, overly complicated, usually. So is that what it's supposed to be? Is just like there are so many of them that it's sort of like a weird meta reference to how over the top this whole idea is, because that's kind of funny in its way. And also, there's a real John Wick sort of vibe to this as well. Finding out that, like, everybody here is a bounty hunter and wants to take them all in. And it's stressed that, like, they're going to get less money if they bring them in dead. So Cogsworth really wants to make sure that they keep everybody alive. But, you know, in John Wick, especially at once we get into 2 and 3, we start to do the whole, like, everybody's an assassin, which just feels like the economy could not possibly support that kind of assassin-based industry. But who am I to get in the way of some fun world building? What can I say? And it does make some sense to me that, like, all these bounty hunters are like, well, we're starving to death because we don't know how to, like take care of ourselves because we just tend to, like, buy stuff with the money that we make. I mean, if you just want to go in that direction, that's fine. I don't mind that. But anyway, so they are all startled that he knows their name. And apparently somebody tried to recruit him for this company at one time, and he rejected it. Employees don't know each other's names or identities and are called by code names. The boss's whereabouts and his identity are also a mystery even to them, a criminal group that just faithfully carries out their orders. And I love that he ends it with, was that supposed to be a secret? And I was like, you snide bitch. And this ends with Cogsworth being like, well, if you know all of our secrets, then I guess we have to kill you. And basically Zorro just stands there looking at him like, all right, try. Go ahead. And this dude ends with saying another gravestone will have to be added. And we get a zoom in on all of these hillsides that are just covered in grave markers. Now, I really want to know, guys, are the names on these grave markers significant in any way? Because they really are very specific, and I felt like, are these the names of people who are, like, on the production team? Like, is this just a, you know, sort of self-reference inside joke sort of thing? Or are they meant to be inside jokes for people who have read the manga, or what? Let's see. Bernadette says, haramaki is the Japanese word for belly band and a very old-fashioned distinct clothing item. Like if someone now would wear doublets. Doublets? I said doublets, but I'm realizing I think it's doublets. Bernadette says, Florian, says, why would we tell you? Oh, about the significance of the markers. Well, I thought that maybe it was just a little bit of trivia and that it wouldn't be plot related. But now that you've said it that way, I guess it's plot related. Bernadette, okay, noted. I didn't realize that was meant to be such a completely, like, the thing that I keep thinking of because of belly band, I think, is if somebody were wearing a huge fanny pack. So, yeah, somebody was like, but I would still be like the guy with the green hair. But I can understand a little bit more being like the one with the fucking huge fanny pack. But yeah, I say that, but, I have bought, guys, I cannot wait. My bridesmaids, I don't think any of the people who are going to be bridesmaids for me listen to this, but I have bought all of them these, like, iridescent fanny packs that are so ugly. And I am so excited. It's part of the bridesmaids, like, gift bag that I'm making for everybody. Anyway, I'm really, because the thing for my bachelorette, the, like, look that we're going for is if you were Lisa Frank going to a rave. And I found these, like, fanny packs, and I was like, oh, Lisa would love these. So, yeah, you need somewhere to put your phone while you're at your rave. You need a place to put your drugs and your, what do they suck on? Those, like, pacifiers. Bernadette says, I just explained the haramaki because it will come up again. Okay, thank you. Haramaki. So, that is the end of that episode. I've started talking about the next one already, but I definitely need to get on with it because we are into it now. But honestly, the next episode is so action heavy that there isn't a whole lot to talk about beat by beat, because it's a lot of just like, they fight and Zorro wins, and they fight and Zorro wins that one too. And it's just like a series of different interesting types of wins. We have Zorro sneaking up behind Cogsworth and sticking his blade through the guy's hair. And he says, "Are you sure you only need to add one gravestone?" Which honestly was such big dick energy. And it turns out all of these guys are kind of bad at their jobs. Like, it's supposed to be intimidating that they're all kind of pro criminals, but he is devastating them. And it's not like it's completely easy for him. He has a few moments where he, like, you know, is off to the side going, "That was close," or "Wow, that's really dangerous," he says about the gun multiple times. But it is genuinely, like, more than once you're like, what? Guys, you're supposed to be good at this. Meanwhile, the whole team is absolutely asleep. They are not noticing any of this at all. And it's really enjoyable to me to have this happen, like, right after Zorro slept through the snowstorm. It's him. He'll be able to yell at them for sleeping through it all later. And he'll, you know, it's fine. Or he won't. Maybe he'll just be like, "We're even now." And he is testing his swords for the first time as well. I am not going to even try to keep track of each of his swords and the way they work, unless you guys stress that it's going to be really good if I do that. But one of them is, like, just kind of not behaving itself the way it's supposed to. And that's the cursed one, and he feels irritated by it, but I'm also like, well, dude, you agreed to buy a cursed sword, so that's, like, sort of on you. And I love when there's a nun that's, like, yelling, "Lord, have mercy, please save us," and then she holds up a merciful Lord blinding powder shooting crucifix. It's not even a crucifix, it's just a cross. And he says, "You should use such a cheap trick on someone with a pure heart." And he says this from behind her, because he has already smacked her and the little kid with the flat of his blade and knocked them out. I don't know how he got around them, but evidently he managed it. And all of this to say that he eventually gets through everybody except our last few people. So he has the confrontation with Miss Monday, and it turns out that he is actually stronger than her, even though it looks like he lost. And he manages to lay her out with one hand. And I was a little bit saddened because I just wanted Miss Monday to succeed because I just enjoy her immediately. But also, he has to win, so that's fine. And then he gets the Mr. 9 treatment, which is, like, really nothing. Mr. 9 is what do they say? All sound and fury signifying nothing. He's got a lot of fancy looking moves, but doesn't actually turn out to be much of an opponent in any way. And he fights with, like, metal baseball bats that have chains inside. It's a weird thing. And then, guys, Miss Wednesday. The combination of things here is really what puzzles me. So Miss Wednesday has, like, as weapons, some perfume bottles that she squeezes that put out some scent that evidently, like, disables you. And she also does this, like, sexy, like, belly dancing tit wiggle thing, which is meant to distract you from noticing that you're being knocked out with poison gas. But primarily, what I am concerned with is her noble steed, which looks like a giant baby duck. Baby duck, I say specifically, due to the proportions of this animal. It looks like a giant baby duck. It has a green cloth saddle with pink saddlebags. A St. Bernard-esque barrel around its neck, but instead of it seeming to carry anything for anyone else the way that a St. Bernard would, there's a straw sticking out of it as if the duck just drinks out of this itself. It's wearing what I can only compare to a swim cap with goggles. It looks like it's a swim. It might be intended to look like an aviator cap, but to me it looks like a swim cap because of the like color of it and everything. I think it's meant to be an aviator cap, and it has like pink goggles over that, and it has like a little bridle with which allegedly Miss Wednesday steers it. But this duck is uninterested in participating and just sits down a couple times, oversteps it. And I just gotta ask, Miss Wednesday, you clearly have some effective weapons. What are you doing? Just ditch the duck, bitch. This is just it's a handicap. What are you doing? This is not helpful. And it doesn't work with your aesthetic either. This doesn't... If Mr. Nine had this duck, that I would kind of like feel went together in a weird way. Because he has a strange look to him as well that's almost clown-like. And so... But she is like so chic, you know... and meant to be so sexy with this dance and uses perfume as a weapon. And then she has this truly bizarre animal that I'm like, I don't get it. Why is that your thing out of everybody's? Alex is yelling, I want that duck. He's doing his best. Look, I'm not saying anything against the duck. I am saying that she is making a poor decision. Leaning on this duck. This duck is not for her. This duck, you know what? I could see Usopp and this duck being a really good team. Because Usopp loves all of his fucking gadgets and shit. And I feel like a duck carries all these gadgets. He could, like, train the duck and be friends with the duck. I see Usopp and the duck having a very bright future together. I would say Luffy, but Luffy just doesn't have the attention span to care for a pet. He just doesn't. So, yeah. I vote Usopp gets a pet eventually that he can, like, sort of turn into an arsenal on legs at some point. I'm so over time. I really do need to wrap it. But yeah, they both get defeated. Like, it's almost no effort on Zorro's part. It's just a series of mistakes that they make. And meanwhile, there are some bounty hunters who have run from the scene because they're realizing that they are outmatched. And they wind up stopping dead when faced with this vulture. And I still don't know what this animal is. I keep saying like a groundhog or a beaver or a cat, a raccoon. I can't tell. I'm confident the one is a vulture, but the other I can't tell. And these two people show up and stop these two animals from attacking the way they clearly were gonna. And I want to know what the deal is. Who's, like, they must be the boss's direct minions. But for whatever reason, these people can, like, bring it all screeching to a halt. So these two people, there is a dude who looks like, he's like a combination of kind of like a Blade plus Prince. You know, he's got like the long coat and the sunglasses, but there's a little bit of like a funkier look to him. And the girl looks like she's out of a 1960s mod magazine. She's got one of those like low hats and she's got a sort of citrus theme going on with her look, which I really enjoy. And she laughs a lot. And these two are evidently higher level than the others and have come to take care of some shit. And everybody thinks that they're here to help deal with Zorro, and they're like, no, that's not it. As it turns out, they are rooting out a spy, and they have zeroed in on Miss Wednesday as being the spy. And she is, it looks like Cogsworth is her bodyguard. He says, squad captain of Alabasta Kingdom Security. You will not harm our princess. And he uses his weapon, and it does absolutely nothing. And they say, Princess Nefertari Vivi. In the name of the Baroque Works boss, we eliminate you two. And Nami, by the way, is awake, and she's been like going through shit, finding treasure, doing everything she can. And she is overhearing this and is just like, oh shit. Meanwhile, Zorro is like up on one of the roofs just having a beer, watching this whole thing, and is also like, ooh, well, this is going to be good. And that is essentially where that episode ends, is everybody standing around going, oh shit, what's going to happen? So I'm also interested in what's going to happen. Otter, Demian, thank you. It's an otter. I am such an idiot. I don't know how that didn't occur to me. Of course. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes. Okay. This weird animal shit happening, though, over here in this neighborhood. I'm just saying that. All right, guys. Well, I have to wrap. Thank you again very much to Bernadette for commissioning this episode. The next one is going to be Tuesday, September 21st. So next week. So come and join me, hang out with me, and I will see you then. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.